Hello BookTube, this is Kelly with Books I'm Not Reading, and I'm here today to talk about Act 3, which isn't really an act, it's just a section of a book, Women of Will by Tina Packer, The Remarkable Evolution of Shakespeare's Characters. I don't know why I don't have that memorized by now. So last week was a bit of a rant for Act 2. I'm going to try to rein it in a little bit this time. But I have to say that I was really excited about the title of this act. I think that the idea is very interesting. And just in case you have missed previous videos, Tina Packer is essentially saying that if you look at Shakespeare's plays in chronological order, which of course we can't, but if you look at them in like a guesstimate of the chronological order, Shakespeare really changes his ideas about women. And some of us have struggled a little bit with that premise because you can't really prove that. But it's an interesting theory. And she definitely takes some giant leaps, and she definitely spends some time talking about herself. She made a 2-person production of Women of Will. This act is living underground or dying to tell the truth. So essentially, Tina Packer is saying the female characters in Shakespeare's plays have 2 choices. They either go into hiding or a disguise, so wearing a man's clothing, or they tell the truth and they die as a result of it. So the one part of it is Rosalind from As You Like It, Viola from Twelfth Night, which we talked about earlier this month. She talks about Measure for Measure, which I haven't read yet, so I'm not gonna give any commentary on that section. And then the dying to tell the truth, and that is of course Ophelia from Hamlet, Desdemona from Othello, and Cordelia from King Lear. And she starts off by talking about the whole kind of switching genders thing, and that Shakespeare had a great lead male actor in Richard Burbage, and knew what Richard Burbage was capable of and what he could do. I'm also wondering if the same is true for the young boys who played the female characters. If at times he deliberately... I just wonder how that played into his portrayal of women. And if he had a really great boy, promising boy actor that he knew could handle a certain part or something like that. There's a scene that we read for last week in Love's Labour's Lost. There's a scene at the end of the play where these four men and 4 women are watching a play called The Nine Worthies. And throughout the play, the men are just constantly making fun of the production because it's kind of put on by the fool characters of the book. The men make all kinds of jeers and they're laughing and joking about the whole thing. And they're all just watching it. There's only 8 or 9 people possibly watching these plays inside a tent, and the women are completely silent. They don't say anything during the play at all, and part of me wonders if his boy talent at the moment was, that they were a little bit more limited, that there was only so much they could do. Now, that is totally my theory. Tina Packer's not saying that. I'm just making wild assumptions at that point. But I do think this juxtaposition of either you disguise yourself so that you can take control of your own destiny, or you tell the truth and you die as a result, is a really interesting kind of dichotomy. So, she, per usual, says some things that I find outlandish. She is almost kind of implying that Shakespeare has a woman's spirit inside of him. She writes, after 1599, Shakespeare seemed to be released to speak as he really felt in Hamlet, Troilus and Cressida, and Coriolanus. The lid came off, no more restraints. He was his own man and his own woman. He's still a man. Shakespeare's still a man. One of the other things that she says that I find puzzling, and maybe some of you can address this, some of you who are not the Shakespearean novice that I am. She says Elizabethans experienced speech. It was felt in their bodies as they said the words. Thus, the life of a conversation was far more present for them. Our modernist habit, by contrast, is to have a thought and then let our mouths report what the brain thought. The only time this habit changes for us is when our bodies are leading an exchange. For example, in a fight or during lovemaking. As actors, we must feel the words in the whole body or they have no power. So I find I'm confused by this, so maybe in the comment section, like, some of you can help me understand a little bit more about what she's trying to say there. Like, I don't quite understand how Elizabethans experience speech differently than we do, other than, you know, our incredible amount of texting and Voxer messages and those sorts of things. I find it hard to believe that they experience speech differently than we do now. Certainly they had a lot of, I mean, Shakespeare uses a ton of words that either somehow got pulled into our vocabulary or are lost for all time and we don't know what they mean. But yeah, it's I found that puzzling. So I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that. And finally, I just want to briefly talk about her experience as an actress. She talks about how she essentially, she spends quite a bit of time talking about her and this male actor, Nigel, who does the Women of Will play productions with her. And that because she has done that, she has made tremendous sacrifices, that she spends 30 weeks in a year out on the road. She said that she's given up the helm of the Shakespeare and Company that she founded. She rarely lives at home. She talks to her husband maybe twice a week and her son once a week. I have given up my income, my autonomy, my institutional support. I am in pain much of the time, but I also have moments of ecstasy. I don't know how this will come out. At one point, it feels ridiculous. At another, this is the only thing to be doing. I often do not know what Nige thinks and feels, but when he's been closed off from me, I panic. I know I'm dependent on him and his disposition to get our job done. And while I find that all really fascinating, I also want to say to Tina Packer, like, that's your decision, that's your choice. You chose to devote the majority of your year to putting on this production of Women of Will, and Nigel has apparently agreed to do this and as well, and he has his own sacrifices that he's making, but your choice to talk to your husband twice a week is it's definitely a choice you make, and I don't really, frankly, I don't know. Is it worth it? I mean, maybe it is to Tina Packer. So, but it is a choice. And finally, the last thing she said that just bowled me over was, let's see here. So she's talking about her relationship with Nigel. To sustain it in generosity, truthfulness, and commitment, she's talking about the play, is a huge demand. The kind of demand Michelangelo put upon himself to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Oh my God. So essentially, her production of Women of Will is equivalent to Michelangelo painting the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. Wow! I tell you what, it takes a lot of guts to compare yourself to Michelangelo. Holy cow. So, anyway, that is my Women of Will post for this week. Next week, we are reading 2 acts, Acts 4 and Acts 5 together. So that should make for some great discussion. If you like reading a Shakespeare book during ShakeTube, and you have some suggestions of something we could read together next year, I would love to hear that. There are a ton of books about Shakespeare out there, and so I'm curious if this is something that interests you, and if there's another book that we could find and plan on for next year. So let me know again in the comment section below. Remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and take care of BookTube. I'll talk to you soon.